This episode of the History Guy is brought to you by Incogni. Take your personal data off the market.
Just 2 days ago, on August 28, 2025, the world got its first glimpse of an extraordinary bit of buried history when the contents of a time capsule that had been placed at the Great Ormond Street Hospital by Princess Diana in 1991 were revealed. The time capsule had been opened because the hospital was expanding, and the hospital executive director, Jason Dawson, said that the contents of the time capsule were really quite moving, almost like connecting with the memories that had been planted by a generation gone by. The announcement came almost exactly 28 years to the day after Diana's death on August 31st, 1997. The capsule included some trinkets from the 1990s that had been suggested by English school children, including a Kylie Minogue CD and a solar-powered calculator, as well as a signed photograph of the princess. My initial reaction was to think it made me feel really old to hear the early 1990s described as a generation gone by. But it did turn this lover of forgotten history towards thinking about these time capsules, which are both repositories of history and history themselves. Every time you sign up for something, and face it, we sign up for things all the time in the digital world, there's a chance that your data is going to fall into the hands of some sort of information broker who will sell it to whoever will pay. And that puts you and your family's privacy at risk of things like scams or harassment or stalking.
And I know, because I'm protected by Incogni, a convenient tool that tracks down the information brokers that collect and sell my private information and enforces my right to have that information taken down. My monthly report shows that Incogni did 32 new removal requests just in the last 4 weeks. If I tried to keep up with that myself, it would have taken me more than 20 hours. I love that Incogni protects my private information, and now they have new ways to do it, with unlimited friends and family plans and a great new custom removal tool where you can point to any People search site or other website where your personal information is visible, and one of their privacy agents will take care of the rest for you.
This risk is real. With the right information, someone could apply for credit cards or file tax returns or even commit crimes in your name, and it could take you years to repair the damage to your finances and your reputation. So take your privacy seriously. Use the code TheHistoryGuy at incogni.com/TheHistoryGuy to get your exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/TheHistoryGuy and the code TheHistoryGuy to get your exclusive offer of 60% off.
What is a time capsule? In its simplest sense, it is a container that has been buried or otherwise hidden for future discovery. What fills a time capsule varies, but is generally seen to represent the time period it comes from. In a modern sense, the term time capsule refers exclusively to a container buried with an intended opening date as a message to the future. Boxes are generally buried for 50 or 100 years, but some have been buried with opening dates thousands of years in the future. While the tombs of some Egyptian pharaohs have often been called time capsules, they were never meant to be opened, and certainly not specifically meant to send a message to the future, even if they have eventually done so. There are others even more unintended, such as the time capsule of the city of Pompeii, buried under volcanic ash. Another concept related to time capsules are items left in the cornerstones of buildings. While these are generally meant to be opened, they have no set time to be opened, instead being opened when and if the building itself is torn down. Under a strict definition, these kinds of time capsules are not true time capsules, although their function is similar, and they are often called as such by the press. Cornerstone time capsules were predated by what archaeologists call foundation deposits. As far back as ancient Sumeria, human societies buried items in or under the foundation of important buildings, especially temples and tombs. Figures, small representation of tools, clay tablets, food, sacrificed animals, and more could be buried, in the hopes that the offerings would convince the gods to extend their protection to the building. According to author William Jarvis, the Epic of Gilgamesh begins with instructions to find a box of copper and a foundation stone in the Great Walls of Uruk. Inside is supposed to be Gilgamesh's tale, written on a lapis tablet. The first time capsule, Jarvis says, was a plot device. The Neo-Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, who lived in the 7th century BC, described finding the foundation deposit of his grandfather, Sennacherib. After finding it, he added his own deposit, including a tablet where he imagined a future ancestor finding both deposits. This kind of deposit is common basically anywhere humans built buildings. Chinese, Buddhist, and Southeast Asian buildings often include tablet deposits and similar items. Setting the cornerstone was widely seen as a significant event in the construction of a building. It is usually the first stone set, and its placement determines the layout of the rest of the building. It is a later, more modern idea to place items of historical value within cornerstones. These kinds of cornerstones have generally become ceremonial. They're not necessarily the first stone set or in the corner. Ceremonial stones often include the year of construction and sometimes other information like the name of the architect. In the 18th century, the Freemasons began holding formal ceremonies for the laying of a cornerstone. The earliest recorded formal ceremony is in 1738. By the second half of the 18th century, the Masons had developed a simple but standardized ceremony. Masons would examine the stone for its trueness, anoint it with corn, wine, and oil, and announce that the stone is well formed, true, and trusty. George Washington himself participated in a ceremony for the laying of the White House cornerstone, as well as the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol. The White House cornerstone disappeared entirely shortly after its dedication. In 1851, when the cornerstone for the U.S. Capitol extension was laid, numerous items were placed within a special granite block, including contemporary newspapers and documents, $40.44 in coins, and a handwritten statement by Daniel Webster. During the renovation of the White House by Harry Truman, a marble box with coins, newspapers, and a whiskey label was found, put there in 1902 by Teddy Roosevelt. In 2023, a copper sphere was uncovered in the spire of a church in western Poland, possibly placed in 1726. If the dates are verified, it will be the oldest known time capsule found. The copper box inside contained 300-year-old coins and still readable parchment. In 1795, Samuel Adams and Paul Revere participated in what is possibly the oldest capsule in the United States, placed in the cornerstone of the Massachusetts State House. The container was briefly removed in 1855, forgotten, and then rediscovered in 2014 by repairmen fixing a water leak. It includes newspapers, coins, and a silver plaque believed to have been engraved by Revere himself. In 1815, when the cornerstone was laid for the Washington Monument in Baltimore, Maryland, a 2-foot cube cornerstone was hollowed out and several jars of coins, newspapers, and a picture of Washington were put inside. It was only found in 2015 during restoration work. A second was found earlier, put there in 1915 during the monument's centennial. Cornerstone boxes were popular in the Victorian era. In 1837, the first year of Victoria's reign, a lion statue made of a special ceramic called codestone was made for a brewery in London. The lion was moved in 1949 to Waterloo Station and again in 1966 to the Westminster Bridge. When it was moved in 1966, a small bottle was found beneath it, which held a code trade card and a coin from the reign of William IV, suggesting the bottle was put there when the lion was first installed in 1837. In 1877, historian Frederick Harrison proposed building a civilizational vault underneath Stonehenge to be dug up by students of the 29th century. The practice spread. In Victoria, British Columbia, numerous boxes were buried with building cornerstones like St. Anne's Convent School in 1871, containing the usual suspects, newspapers, coins, relics, and minutes from the ceremony. In 1834, a capsule was buried beneath a statue of Miguel de Cervantes in Madrid, which held a guide in 4 volumes of the 1819 edition of Don Quixote. In 2013, a capsule was found in the bell tower of Zagreb Cathedral in Croatia, containing a message from the architect who left it there in 1898. Queen Victoria herself even participated in the burial of a capsule in 1899, when an oblong casket of copper with gold decoration was laid under the foundation of the Victoria and Albert Museum. But the craze took hold most firmly in the United States. Boxes and jars of all kinds were stored within cornerstones and other locations inside buildings and beneath monuments. On July 4, 1825, one was buried under the Norfolk County Courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts, and was laid beneath the St. Mary's Church in Newport, Rhode Island on June 14, 1849. On the construction of the Reno Masonic Lodge in 1872, a capsule was buried and only opened in 2019. It included more than 40 items, including a corkscrew and several silver dollars minted at Carson City. In 1879, a capsule was buried at the Fishburne Military School in Waynesboro, Virginia, to be opened on the school's 300th anniversary in 2179, illustrating the optimism of the people that buried it. In 1897, one of the strangest items to be placed in a time capsule was allegedly put into a box in the cornerstone of the Eastland, Texas courthouse. The box held a Bible, a bottle of whiskey, and a live horned toad. When the box was opened, when the courthouse was torn down 31 years later, the lizard was supposedly produced alive. The lizard became something of a national sensation and was nicknamed Ol' Rip. Ol' Rip died within the year, and many are skeptical of the story. Usually considered the world's first true time capsule, in 1876, New York Magazine publisher Anna Dime assembled a safe dubbed the Century Safe at the U.S. Centennial Exposition held in Philadelphia. A large iron box lined with purple velvet, it was stuffed with all manner of things from the era, such as a gold pin and Tiffany and Company inkstand, a book on temperance, a collection of signatures, including hundreds of Americans who signed it during the 1876 exposition for a few dollars, along with ones from prominent Americans and photographs taken of President Ulysses S. Grant and others. The safe was sealed in 1879 by President Rutherford Hayes and eventually collected dust under the east portico. Forgotten, it was rediscovered in 1958 when an extension was built onto the Capitol front. The safe was finally opened as planned in July 1976 by then President Gerald Ford. Senator Mike Mansfield said the opening honored the wish of a lady who sought to speak to us from the other side of a 100-year gulf. The contents were described as being in near perfect condition, although the silver was tarnished and the books covered with dust. The contents were given to the Smithsonian. The nation's centennial inspired quite a few time capsules, including another advertised at the same exposition. Charles Mosher, a Chicago photographer, created a memorial safe for the American Centennial Exposition in 1876, although it wasn't sealed until later. He offered to take a photo of anyone to be included, for a few dollars, of course. In it, he included 10,000 portraits, along with literature on eugenics-oriented schools and colleges. Mosher argued for laws such as banning dime museums from exhibiting genetic monstrosities, and thought by the time his box was opened, America could produce a beautiful world with a noble race of men and women with perfect forms. Historian Dr. Nick Yablon explains the capsule gave physical form to his racial visions. Especially in the early 1900s, Dr. Yablon says the eugenic ideas come up in almost every time capsule. Mosher's box was opened early in 1908. By 1900, the practice was becoming quite general. On December 31st, 1900, the Detroit Century Box was created in Detroit. Teddy Roosevelt buried one near a monument to Lewis and Clark in Portland, Oregon in 1903. In 1936, Thornwell Jacobs built what he dubbed the Crypt of Civilization, which he envisioned as an attempt to create a complete representation of life on Earth up to that point, as a resource for future archaeologists and historians. Constructed in a swimming pool in the basement of Phoebe Hearst Hall of Oglethorpe University, the airtight chamber had oxygen replaced with inert nitrogen, and the door was welded shut in 1940, to be opened in the year 8113. A large number of items are included, from voice recordings to thousands of pages of literature on microfilm to a purse with typical contents, to Lincoln logs and a statue of the Lone Ranger. Though these may be true time capsules, none of them were actually called that at the time. The term wasn't coined until 1938, when the Westinghouse Company advertised and buried a 7-foot-long, torpedo-like capsule 50 feet underground at the New York City World's Fair. Initially proposed as a time bomb, George Pendry, the project coordinator, had the idea to preserve a cross-section of our time for the Futurians, who would open it 5,000 years later in 6039. A second capsule was buried in 1965 at the same location. Record books of the capsules were widely distributed to libraries that include a number of illustrations and instructions meant to assist people of the far-off future to decipher and translate the contents. In 1974, Allied military leaders and Queen Juliana of the Netherlands buried memorabilia relating to Operation Market Garden from World War II, to be opened on the 100th anniversary of the operation in 2044. Burying time capsules is especially popular on big anniversaries. Uncountable numbers of them were buried during the 1976 bicentennial celebrations, including, according to the buriers, the world's largest, a 45-ton vault in Seward, Nebraska, constructed by Harold Keith Davidson, which included a fully intact Chevy Vega and 5,000 other items. Davidson asked that the capsule be opened 50 years later. Of course, one of the greatest problems with time capsules is how easily they are lost. The capsule buried by Teddy Roosevelt was meant to be opened in 2003, with Teddy Roosevelt IV present at the ceremony, but no one could find it. It remains lost. Corona, California buried a series of 17 time capsules beginning in the 1930s, but in 1985, when they were meant to be opened, couldn't find them. We just tore up a lot of concrete around the Civic Center, one man said. Just as perilous to a time capsule is time itself. One box opened in 2003 in Aberdeen, Washington from 1909 was found to hold only wet crud. Paper items, so often deposited, are often pulled out in damp shreds, like the damaged remains of books placed inside the foundation of the Salt Lake Temple Foundation stone in 1857. Dampness destroyed all organic material inside a nearly 200-year-old time capsule discovered at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, but some old coins were found. A 1957 Plymouth Belvedere was buried on the grounds of the Tulsa Courthouse in a 50-year time capsule, and intended to be given away as a prize awarded upon the vehicle's unearthing for the individual or their descendant who came nearest to guessing Tulsa's population in 2007. But when the vault was opened in 2007, it was found to have completely filled with water. The car, dubbed Miss Belvedere, has undergone years of restoration. Designing capsules that can stand the test of time is one of the greatest challenges designers faced. The Seward, Nebraska capsule included a ventilation system meant to deal with moisture, and the pyramid on top was meant to act as a roof to deflect water from the vault. Still, letters left in the pyramid became wet, and an estimated 20% were ruined, and rust was obvious on the cars. Older capsules were often made of copper boxes, but items were also stored inside sealed glass bottles in an attempt at preservation. A memorabilia box was set behind the Memorial Amphitheater at Arlington National Cemetery in 1915. It was designed to have two copper boxes nestled within each other, with glass plates separating the boxes for protection. When opened on the centennial of the amphitheater's dedication in 2020, the items were found to have been well protected. Two capsules were buried at the 1970 Japan World Exposition in Osaka. The identical spherical stainless steel capsules resembling traditional pots each weighed about 2 tons and hold 2,098 objects of all kinds, including technology, 16 millimeter film, pictures, and gold-plated phonographic records, representing the achievements and everyday experiences of Japan in 1970. The website of the Panasonic Corporation, a sponsor of the capsule, says, in the construction of the capsules and preparation of their contents, nothing was left to chance. Every item was treated with the most advanced preservation techniques known to man at the time. Some preservation techniques were devised specially for this project. To protect the items inside, air was removed and replaced with argon. One of the capsules was opened in 2000, and experts spent 6 months examining the objects to document what changes the objects had undergone in 30 years before they were reburied. In an effort to both preserve the items and remember the capsule, it's planned that it will be opened every 100 years thereafter until both capsules are open for good after 5,000 years, in the year 6970. Perhaps the greatest concern is how the items will be received. Often when a capsule is open, the public simply finds the contents boring. The Daily Beast called the opening of a century-old time capsule in 2014 a dud, while a 50-year-old one in Derry, New Hampshire literally came up empty. In 1986, a 25-year-old capsule was opened in Tucson, holding a faded local newspaper in worse condition than many I've witnessed being excavated from the bowels of landfills, and some business cards. A time capsule from 1948 found in the cornerstone of a Niagara Falls funeral home held a piece of cake wrapped in paper. Various more ambitious versions of time capsules have also been proposed or created. A project called Earth's Black Box, a collaboration between researchers at the University of Tasmania, the marketing agent Clemenger BBDO, and the creative agency The Glue, involves a monolith that stores over 500 metrics related to the health of the planet and humanity, meant to document how humanity solves or fails to solve climate issues. Data is continually collected digitally inside the solar-powered steel box 10 meters long, 4 meters high, and 3 meters wide, located in a remote part of western Tasmania. Designers say that the project aims to hold world leaders accountable by preserving their actions for future generations. The United States launched several time capsules with spacecraft, such as the plaque sent with Pioneer or the Golden Record sent with Voyagers 1 and 2. A planned KEO space capsule, the name derived from the three sounds most common to all human languages, was proposed in 1994. Meant to be a time capsule for the far future, plans are for it to contain samples of air, seawater, and earth, a diamond encasing a drop of human blood, photographs in the contemporary Library of Alexandria of human knowledge. It's meant to be launched to an altitude of around 1,800 kilometers, which should bring it back to Earth in around 50,000 years. Originally meant to be launched in 2003 by the European Space Agency, due to delays, the capsule still has not been launched as of 2025. Another unique capsule will hold 100 unreleased manuscripts from authors like Margaret Atwood. Initiated in 2014 and called the Future Library, one manuscript a year will be added for 100 years. The manuscripts are kept in a specially designed room known as the Silent Room at the Dijkman Library in Oslo. In 2014, 1,000 trees were planted near Oslo, with the intent that they be used for the paper on which to print a limited edition of the anthology of the manuscripts in 2114.
As history, time capsules are often discounted because they're carefully curated with an eye towards posterity that kind of taints the idea that they authentically represent our times. William Jarvis, author of Time Capsules: A Cultural History, argues that they're of little historical value, filled with useless junk and items in new condition. But Dr. Yablin argues that while discounted by academic historians, they often preserve pieces of everyday life that go ignored. Whichever your opinion, time capsules have simply become a cultural tradition, which is history in itself. And we continue to make them, actually lots of them. Little boxes intended to make our present into future history, in which we place the useless junk that we choose to represent our lives to posterity. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.